Good morning and welcome to SimWorld today, Thursday morning, May 8th, day one of Hoopsteria. We've got plenty of action. All of that starts this morning at 11:30 a.m. with the first of a 8-game slate between Texas A&M and St. Mary's. To talk some of that, I am joined by Maestro, who is going to be down in Virginia Tech's region, who we will get rolling here in the Los Angeles area. He'll be calling this afternoon's games. Good morning, Maestro. How are you?
Doing outstanding, fam. How you doing today? I think I found my pants, so I'm good to go.
You'll need them for tonight, where you're going to be calling opening round action in the West region. Gonzaga in California, the 8-9, followed up by Virginia Tech and Virginia, the 1-6 matchup. All of that taking place at Crypto.com Arena. I do want to talk Virginia Tech. I want to talk day one, but I want to start by asking the question of which number one seed, in your opinion, is most at risk. And that doesn't necessarily, you can take that in any way you want. It doesn't have to be at risk in the first round. Just at risk maybe within their own conference. But who is, in your opinion, at the most risk?
Well, it was so weird because I was trying to play that through my head as we were doing our brackets, right? And I'm thinking, okay, so what are we really looking at? We're looking at a team that has shown us, at least for me, a team that has shown us their inability to be consistent. All of our number one seeds have done that in their way, but it is the way it is how their consistency played out, right? So for me, I really picked and thought about Virginia Tech with this, and I'll tell you why. They've had some of those wins that were not surprising, but they also had a couple of losses, particularly at home, that kind of made me go, that game probably should not have been the way it was. Now, some of those losses were close, right? You look at them, their wins were pretty big, 20-point spreads in certain cases and things like that. Or some of those losses are by 3 points or whatever, or in that, and that's sort of like 2 possession range, right? For Marsh, for me, that idea is a team that will need to, in this one and done situation, play big in front of whoever they're playing against, and they're not going to get the marshmallow, so to speak, in this particular case, and they're going to be in tight games, and that seems to be when they're in trouble.
So you're thinking Virginia Tech, with their bracket, is the most at risk of getting knocked out sooner than folks expect.
Yes, and I'm gonna lead that into when we talk about them coming up.
Do you have an idea of? Yeah, we will. Of like, where do you think they're going out? So they got Virginia, then they'll get the winner of Gonzaga, Cal, and then
hmm
they could get one of, if they were to advance through there, into the Super 16 with San Diego State, Texas Tech, North Carolina, Wisconsin. So where do you see them
Right there.
falling in that Super
Right
16
there,
range?
right there, right. Super 16. If they get that far, I have a feeling it's going to be North Carolina that's going to put it up on them. Or a team that plays like North Carolina, I think is going to be problematic for them. I know it's ACC on ACC crime, but but the reality of the push and how it's going to work out for them really just makes me curious as to, at this moment, one and done, all the pressure, number one seed, tight games. I think we can expect tight games from here on out. They're not going to get a chance to get those big 10, 12, 20-point wins here. How are they going to play through those?
I that range is where Virginia Tech starts to get dicey. This Virginia Tech has been really good all season, and I won't talk too much about it because that's our next segment. But they've been really good all season against bad basketball teams, because their 5
Mm-hmm.
losses are to Duke twice, to Louisville once, to Alabama and Kansas. Kansas and Alabama are both
Right.
2 seeds. Duke's a 1 seed. Louisville is a 3 seed. They've played those other teams. Georgia Tech they beat 91-60. They've beat Georgia Tech 88-55. They did
Mm-hmm.
beat Louisville, but they beat them by 1. They beat North Carolina 81-75. So they've played really well against the teams that aren't elite, and then they've not really played great when they've had to play against some of those high level teams. To me, I think the group that I think is most at risk, and it's Texas. That bracket with Georgetown playing really good basketball, Memphis, who has a
Yeah.
really talented number one, Mississippi State if they were to make it to the Super 16. Illinois, who I have coming out of that first round matchup, or Donald Effetti, both of them can really be disruptive. I have Texas making it to the quad, but I think that that's a group that might be at the most risk. I think it's one of the better regions. The other ones certainly have talent, but as I look around, no one really scares me in the East region against Duke. Villanova and Louisville are both very good, but they don't really scare me. The Southern region, I think, would be a because I think Alabama loses in the grade 8. I don't know if that's at risk, right? I don't see anybody in those first 2-3 games that would be challenging for Alabama. I think there's some real challenges ahead for Texas, regardless of who wins in other parts of the bracket, because you could be getting Dylan Harper and Rutgers. You could be getting a really good Princeton defense. You could be getting Richard Pizarski and Lorenzo Phenom in Michigan. I mentioned Donald Effetti and D'Angelo Jordan in Minnesota or Illinois. I think there's a lot more landmines for Texas early in the bracket.
You know what? I see that and I can feel that. Here's my pushback on that a little bit, though, my man Marsh, and that is this: Texas played so strong on the road, right? At Colorado win, at Auburn win, at Florida win, at St. John's win, and we can just keep going down. They and oh, by the way, some of those wins were tight, which means that they were able to kind of like squeeze that sphincter, keep the juice inside, and keep it going. But there were also some games where they controlled it and the other team was coming back on them late. But some of their biggest wins came on the road, sometimes bigger than even, like, for instance, against Texas Tech, and also against Kansas. So, just the fact that they're so road tested, I think that gives a bit of, what's a good word I'm looking for here? I think that gives them a bit more stability in the uncertainty of tournament play that maybe some other teams won't have. And that's the only pushback I have. I agree with you 100% everything else you said, but what makes me sort of itchy about that is their strength on the road.
Yeah, I mean, look, of their first, I don't even know how many games it is, up until December 18th, they played all but 2 games on the road. I mean, that's obscene. And they, to your point, they beat Villanova in that stretch. They beat Kentucky in that stretch. They beat Jackson State. They beat Illinois on the road, albeit by 1. St. John's, Auburn. I mean, a long list of teams that are really good. But if you look at it, to me, I think one of the things that stands out is there's not a lot of wins. And there are a couple of them. I'll give you that. Like the Kentucky win, really big, 83-54. That's a blowout win. You beat Villanova, 82-63. But mixed in there, a 1-point win over Illinois, a 1-point win over St. John's, 3 over Florida. Like, there was a lot of games in there that I look at and say, if you're as good as you are, and again, I mean, look, we should say this as maybe like the most obvious of caveats here, Maestro. These are all really good basketball teams. I mean, they're number 1 seeds for a reason. They lost 4 or 5 times, right?
Exactly.
I mean, we're trying to we're really trying to pick apart an otherwise really great piece of work. But if that's the pick apart, that would be it. Yes, you're battle tested, but I don't know that they had convincing wins this season where I sat back and said, okay, that's a big win. They're big wins, but did you convince me against lower competition? And I think that's the question mark, right, for this team, is when you're playing teams that you should really beat for Texas, I don't know that they convinced me in the same way that a team like Virginia Tech did.
I got you. And that makes 100%. It makes sense. For me, like I say, it's about the environment, but you're absolutely right. You did what you're supposed to do, but did you really do what you could have done?
Well, speaking of what they could have done, how about let's talk some Virginia Tech. We alluded to this earlier. The big moniker around Virginia Tech is the big game. They have not been able to get the big win on the season. They have been one of the best teams in college basketball all year. 5 losses now. But their 5 losses are to teams that you very well could see, as we mentioned a second ago, later on. Kansas, Alabama, Duke twice, and Louisville. So how far can Virginia Tech go? And I think more importantly, Maestro, can they finally win big?
I me, Marsh. That I want to say yes, right? I really do. I want to say yes, but what's really holding me back is the strength of their wins. For me, the strength of their wins came down to matchups. And by that, I mean this. we know that they were a decent matchup against a team like Georgia Tech, right? They just happen to have, the way they play, right? That deliberate style. I'm going to say, I know it says deliberate. I'm going to say selectively deliberate because we know if they got a chance to get out and move, they got out and moved, right?
Mm-hmm.
So against a team like Virginia Tech, against a team like UNLV, against another team that I thought was really more up and down that gave them trouble was Xavier. And so I'm going to go to that game as sort of a surprise game. That was sort of the punch in the head game for me for them. Even though they won it, the fact that Xavier pushed them with their own type game where the matchup was favorable for the other, right?
Mm-hmm.
So here for them now, moving into this particular case, they're going against teams that play on all three levels. They're going to be playing against transition-based teams, defense to offense, offense to defense. They're going to be playing in teams that are deliberate. I mean, truly deliberate, want to take the air out the ball and take the SIM card out the cell phone. And they're going to be playing against teams that also are looking for, we want to get up early, so we're going to hit you with a lot of energy early, and then we're going to pull back and just turn the floor into quicksand.
Yeah.
Do you feel?
Go
I'm
ahead.
sorry. I was going to say real quick. Do you feel Virginia Tech is the kind of team that can wrestle the control from another team that will do that to them if the matchup is unfavorable? And I don't.
See, I think the opposite. Now, I think defining winning big, I don't have them making it to the quad.
Hmm.
So I guess I don't think they can win big, but I do think this team is making the grade A because when you look through, like, yeah, they had the tough game against Xavier, but if you look back at what their track record has been, it's been if this team is not at or even near our level, we're winning, right? Virginia Tech is going to win. They're a great offensive group. They've got a
Great.
really great number one and number two in Travion Novick and Newly Cox. Um, Maybe it's just that their schedule didn't break in the same ways that Kansas's did, that Texas's did, that
Mm.
Alabama's did, right? They got stuffed with playing Kansas non-conference, playing Alabama non-conference, playing having to play Duke twice,
Great
having
point.
to play Louisville twice. They had to face really good basketball teams every single step of the way. Now, I'm not saying that other teams didn't, but I think what I am getting to is that I don't think this team is getting past the grade 8 because I think that's where they're falling, right? As I said earlier, the teams that they're going to potentially face in the first 3 rounds, right? So Virginia they will face, Gonzaga, California, San Diego State, Texas Tech, North Carolina, Wisconsin. Virginia Tech is much better than all of those teams, and North Carolina is
Hmm.
the only team that's really in their ballpark. And
Okay.
this season has told us from Virginia Tech, if you're not in our league, we are winning. If you are in our league, we're probably losing. And that's where we're not going to get a team in their league until they have to potentially face a Kansas, UCLA in that grade 8. And if one of those guys goes down, Kansas or UCLA early, I think there's a real pathway for Virginia Tech to get into the quad and potentially make noise. Do I think they will win there? Their track record says no, but there is a pathway that I think any conversation otherwise is a little unfair to them. But heck, we
Hmm.
could look back at this thing in a couple days and say, well, they lost to Virginia, so there you have it.
Great point. Great point. Well said.
So, Maestro, you're on 2 calls tomorrow. We mentioned that you are going to be calling the Virginia Tech Virginia game tomorrow night. What's your day one expectations? It doesn't have to be in that bracket, but across the board. What's your day one expectations for the first day of Hoopsteria?
I am really feeling, and I know, by the way, guys, you can go check out our brackets. They were put up, you can see, media against media here on brackets, stuff like that. Please do that. And please, you know what, and please check out all the other podcasts that are kind of talking about the same thing. We all kind of have our idea of who's going to be the upset through story and all of the others, which is great. So we love to argue about that, even amongst ourselves, even when we're not on mic. So just going to get that out the way right now. I really feel the first day is going to have two huge surprises, or three huge surprises. One, I think it's going to be in the first game that I'll be calling with the man himself, Mr. Blaze, the Blazer, Rick Blaze.
Mm-hmm.
I think California is going to give Gonzaga the Sasquatch of college basketball. They only come out during Hoopsteria. We most people don't know where Gonzaga is most of the time until this time of year. I think California is going to give them some serious problems. if not even win the game outright. I also feel that a sleep on St. Mary's might not be advised because of what they're going to be, the way they play. I think it's going to be a matchup issue with Texas A&M. And the other one, I'm just going to get this out the way right now, so going to call it early. Duke is going to struggle with Creighton in the early game. The
Duke
one I think it's a 1
struggling with
o'clock game.
Creighton.
I think I believe they're going to get through, but I think it's going to be a struggle. I think it's going to come down to the last 4 minutes of the game, where Duke's overall athleticism is going to take over. But those are my three thoughts about that day. How about you?
Well, I mean, I think it's entertaining. We got all four number one seeds in action, right? Virginia Tech, Alabama, Texas, and Duke. So my expectations are, and maybe it's more of a what am I going to watch for? It's what do those 16 seeds do? What does Creighton with Ethan Letterman? What does Marquette with Alex Rodriguez? What does Penn State with Chance Milton Jones? What is Virginia with Johnny Baldwin? What do they do, right? Do we see a whimper from all those four teams that have been pretty inconsistent all year long, or do we see them coming out with, a vindictive approach? So my expectations are I would expect to see the number one seeds roll, right? It's so few and far between that a number one seed wins a game or loses that game. But my expectations are what are we watching? What are we seeing? Do we see teams rolling over? Because the 8-9 matchup is always a toss-up, right? I mean, anyone that feels confident one way or another, I'm not dismissing your confidence. I don't believe your confidence, I think would be the way I would put it. But the 116, we got some teams that are going to be playing very, very hard to try to make their season. You win this if you're Creighton. If you're Creighton, by the way, a team that made it very deep last season. If you win that game, that is a defining moment for the season. And say we might not be far away.
Look, Marsh, dude, you nailed it. It's a poster on the wall. I mean, that's one of those times when you go into the gym and they're going to have one of those 21-foot by 5-foot post banners of the time that remember that time in community college when I posed as Mike Honcho. It's gonna be one of those moments that are gonna be in there, man. Absolutely.
It's a big moment, and there's some teams that are gonna be playing with plenty at stake there. All right, Maestro. Well, everyone can tune in to you tomorrow night. You are again in Los Angeles for the opening round of the West Region. Virginia Tech at 10, preceded by Gonzaga and Cal at 8:30. I myself will be on the road later on Thursday night as I've got to get myself out to the Penn State and Alabama game up there in Miami. It's fortunate. It's right down the road for me. I don't have to go very far for it, so I get to see that and check out Kansas State, Indiana here in Miami. So it's a great thing also that, hey, by the way, the just so you know, right, the Miami Heat aren't playing basketball right now. Don't forget it. Neither are the Lakers. That's why we can get into L.A. and that's why we can get into Dallas, because Dallas decided to get rid of their team. We just got to figure out some scheduling with MSG. So, all right, Maestro, that's where folks can tune into you. Appreciate you coming on. We will talk to you again next Thursday. Appreciate everyone tuning in here on SimWorld TV, the only place you can see the game, be the game.